Let's look at economics for that. We are going to look at the questions that you might see in economics. This is based on the curriculum of economics for various exams as well as different MBA schools. The idea about studying economics for the BAT exam is that you don't need to memorize anything. Most of the times they'll give you the theory, the formulas. You just need to have an understanding of some simple things which are like intuitive and common sense in a way. So you have to develop your common sense, and there are some topics around which the questions would revolve. So you should look at a little bit about the interest rate news, because most of the time the articles which they give are on the interest rate news. So you should know about what's happening in the interest rate world and what's Fed doing. I'll talk about the microeconomics first. In microeconomics, you have the supply and the demand curve, which is seen most often in the exam. You have two types of movement. In the short run, you have the demand which can move, and in the long run, the companies can new companies can come in, and the aggregate supply by those companies in the market could move. So just remember, when you see a chart and it asks you it asks about short-term movement, then short-term movement will always be represented by a movement in the demand curve, not by the supply curve. And they have charts where they would move the supply curve. Now supply would change in long term, because in short term company cannot do away with many contracts, so they cannot change the technology, hire and fire people and things like that. So that's one probable question type. The other is caps and floor, like government comes into play and puts a cap on prices that you can sell beyond these prices. For example, the government puts a cap on the real estate, and which causes a lot of transaction in the black market. Similarly, a government can put floor like a minimum wage, and that causes unemployment. So always these caps and floor are inefficient. Most of the times they are not efficient, but they might not affect the market if the prices that are sold, uh, that the prices at which the equilibrium is reached is not affected by that price. For example, if a government puts a minimum rate of $5 and the equilibrium price is $8 of minimum wage, then it would not have any effect, because in any ways the $5 is not used, because people are getting more and companies are willing to pay more. And likewise, when the government put a cap on the prices and cap is very high, it's not going to affect. So just remember, caps and floor are bad, but many of the times they don't affect the market when they have a price which is higher or lower, or away from the equilibrium in a way. So the loss that happens to the market by caps and floor is called the deadweight loss. The news on the cap and floor, like a minimum wage, is seen in the Californian labor market, where they are trying to double the rate, double the minimum wage, and that would cause loss and maybe some job loss. So that's a way to look at it. Now, the charts that you might get could also be about average variable cost, average total cost, and marginal cost in perfect competition and monopoly. So you need to understand how the markets take in the price, especially in perfect competition and in a monopoly. So in a perfect competition, the firms don't profit. Whatever price they produce, they sell at that price, because the market is very sensitive. If they try to increase the price, then the demand would go. And the cost of production matches the cost of sales. They earn like no profit, no loss. Anybody can enter and exit the market, and there could be a numerical on this. Now, in the short term, let's look at supply and demand. So, when the demand increases, the first chart, the northwest chart, it's an increase of demand and the price increases. The next chart on your right is with the supply. So in that chart, the supply at $40, at $60, suppose you are earlier supplying 2 units, now you are supplying at $60 4 units. So supply has increased in the northeast graph, in the second graph. So here, so you can always look at $60, he was supplying 2, Now he is supplying 4, so supply has increased. And this is about a price, a cap. So if the government puts $100 price, and let's assume that it's say a maximum price, because butter is very useful. So is the maximum price above or below the equilibrium? It's above the equilibrium. So governments, so this minimum price would cause a trouble here, because this minimum price is above the equilibrium. So at this minimum price, there would be this much demand and this much supply. So there would be a dead weight loss. And an example of land where government puts that you cannot sell your land above a particular price. So if they put this price, then the supply is this, the demand is this. So likewise, you can look at many examples in details about how this would work. Now you can also get a numerical a matrix of this format, where you'll have total cost, variable cost, marginal cost, average total cost, and average variable cost. And they might ask you to choose a supply curve. So at what at what price a company would supply. So in that case, you would start at the minimum of AVC, which is 75, this entry, and then you will do a zigzag and start with 100 and 150. So that's how. Now this is a very important chart which you might see in a lot of microeconomics curriculum, a very big overlap, that the price at which the company would sell uh, is the intersection of marginal cost and average total cost, and this is the price at which the goods are being sold at the equilibrium. So suppose we are selling ducks, and the number of firms are 10, and price of duck is 4, and there are 40. So you can see here 40 ducks are sold at $4 each. So this is how we look at the marginal cost. Now, what would happen if the demand increases? So if the demand increases, this would be the new equilibrium. The price to produce this, if suppose it is 4.5. So if the price to produce this is 4.5, and you can sell it at a cheaper price in the equilibrium, then you are going to be profit in the short term. Now in the long term, many companies would jump in, and the price would decrease. So in the long term, supply changes. In the short term, demand can change. So just remember this thing, because in the long term, the companies can do a lot of things to actually, new companies can come in, and companies can change the cost, like they can use the other technology or whatever. So that was it. So those were the questions of microeconomics that you can get. Most of it would be a movement in a supply curve or a demand curve, and price floor and price caps. So those would be something that you can expect for the bad exam in the microeconomics. I hope this was useful. Thank you for listening.